personne qui va venir nous rejoindre maintenant est un ancien triathlète professionnel américain, pionnier du triathlon longue distance et multiple vainqueur sur des distances comme l'Ironman pour les spécialistes. Doctorat en biomécanique à l'Université de Boulder dans le Colorado, professeur agrégé dans cette même université, anciennement directeur du département Footwear Research au laboratoire de recherche DIGISPORT. On rêverait d'y avoir mis un petit œil pour voir comment ça se passait. Lui, il va certainement nous expliquer comment ça se passait. En tous les cas, je vous demande d'accueillir M. Ray Browning.
Bonjour. That's all the French. Sorry. This is a chance now for you to practice English. I apologize for that. I am really honored to be here to help kick off this amazing new graduate school. I'm also humbled because there are an amazingly large number of very talented individuals who've made this possible, and I want to express my thanks to Hugo and Benoit for bringing me here. It's certainly been a pleasure so far, and I'm really, really looking forward to this program and the success that it brings, both in terms of the knowledge that it will create and the students that will go on to do great things from this kind of program. So I think one of the things that makes this particular project or program, graduate school, unique and potentially very impactful is the diversity. It combines many, many disciplines, many talents, and many experts. And a lot of times people do diversity sort of as one thing. I've taken a slightly different path, and I don't know that I would consider myself an expert in anything, but I've certainly been exposed to a lot of things, including the things that you see listed here. And so I can appreciate a diverse perspective, coming at something from the lens of an athlete, or the lens of an engineer, or the lens of a scientist, or the lens of an entrepreneur. And I'm excited about this program because I think it will offer the opportunity for both the faculty and the students to benefit from that perspective. I'm going to keep this simple and high level because I want to, the science is in the room, it's not from me. And I'm going to talk about three things, and they're really about scope, about approach, and about reach. And I think there are things that I really am excited that I think the DIGISPORT program can bring to all of these. But I'm going to start by maybe this photograph. And some of you might know this is Danny McCaskill, who's known for doing some quite remarkable things on or with or joined to a bicycle. And the reason I put this photograph up is I think all of us can relate to this kind of experience. And it goes something like this. You see a picture or a video, and the first thing you might do is go, wow, ha ha ha. That is unbelievable. It's amazing. I cannot understand how somebody can do that. I did the same thing when I watched the 100 meters in 2008 and 12. And then the second thing that happens is you go, how does he do that? How does he do that? And then the third thing that happens is, at least for me sometimes, I wonder if I could do that. And that in that moment, that transition from how he could do that to I wonder if I could do that is what sport is. It's that broadening, and what is now possible for me to consider was something that I didn't consider before I saw something like this. And that is the essence of sport, and I think the gift that this program will bring is people who share that same passion that starts with a wow and ends with something highly impactful, or lots of bruises in my case, whenever I've tried to do something like this. So I'm going to talk about three things. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit about reach, I'm going to talk about, or scope, I'm going to talk about approach, and I'm going to talk about reach, but I'll keep it very short. Go big. And what I mean by that, and I think Alon was alluding to this as well, is sport is not just elite. It certainly includes elite, but it's everybody. At Nike, we had a phrase which I really related to, and it was that if you have a body, you are an athlete. And that really, to me, is the embodiment of the DIGISPORT graduate school program, is that it will impact every individual that benefits from the knowledge that's generated and translated here. And the way that I like to maybe think about how we celebrate sport, or the things, is not what sport does, but what we get from participating in sport, or even watching sport. And the short list for me is we get a sense of accomplishment. I did something, regardless of what that is. We become maybe acquainted with discomfort. Some of us are much more acquainted with it maybe than others, but we become acquainted with discomfort, and I think that's extremely valuable. We learn patience, because as much as the digital world is accelerating beyond ways that we can keep up with, our physiology and our mechanics have not. And so we have to wait, and we have to train, and we have to prepare, and that leads us to the things that we're trying to accomplish. There's no guarantee of success. In fact, many of us, I think, can attest that there's a lot less success and there's a few victories, and that's really okay. And the resilience that that builds, and this is a time when we need resilience. And so the message of sport, I think, is highly relevant. And it's one of the few things I think you can do where you're proud and disappointed at the same time. And sport as unique in that. So I want to talk about maybe one example of from work that I have been involved in that maybe embodies the spirit of broad approach or going big. And as a person who was a lifelong and still lifelong athlete, I was interested in how obesity was affecting people's ability to be physically active. And the way that I was approaching that question in our lab was very individualistic. We bring a person in and we would measure and study, and we were really curious how we could better prescribe physical activity for individuals who were overweight or obese. And I became aware that the impact that the work was having was not as much as I would like. It wasn't changing how people were physically active. And it became clear that it wasn't that, it was a behavioral change that was needed, not necessarily the understanding of the mechanics, although that was certainly helpful. So I partnered with a friend of mine who happened to be one of the most brilliant physicists that I've ever had the chance of working with. And you would not think a physicist would know much about this behavior. But what we worked on was a social network model of how, and it was based on work around how things like disease spread in a population. And what we did is we created a simulation, which this represents, of how a population's distribution of something like body weight would change with an intervention delivered to some segment of that population. So to orient you in this figures, green is healthy weight individuals, and blue is overweight individuals. And there's lots of little red dots you can see in there. And the little red dots were individuals that we said, well, what if we just targeted those individuals for an intervention? And there was a lot of reason behind targeting those individuals. The main reason was they had a social network that predisposed them to being successful. they had friends who didn't share the same behaviors that they did, that did do activity. There were other characteristics of those individuals. And the take-home message from doing this work was, and it was sort of like, it matters not only that we have a deep understanding of how to prescribe the exercise, but we have to understand the context that the individual operates. And if we don't do that, and here we pull people into interventions all the time, and it's rare that we ever ask them about their social network. Who do you hang out with? What people do you do things with? Are you a celebrity? Do you have a lot of connections? Do you have very few connections? And it was a real eye-opening experience of broadening the lens and being able to maybe see something that I wasn't able to see when I stayed really, really narrow. So, go big. Be curious. And I mean that in the most genuine, naive way. Ask stupid questions. I'm quite good at it. My students would always tell me that. But the reason that I say that, and I really think that this program is set up to do that, in that we are training the future scientists to find answers. We also need to train them to ask good questions. And one of the things I really like about this program is the fact that it is focused not only on the discovery, but also on the translation. And I think we all know of many examples of great work that never gets translated. And one of the reasons that I have come to realize is that the translation requires relevance. It requires you as an investigator to go over into the community that you're trying to represent, whether it's an elite athlete or whether it's somebody who's trying physical activity for the first time, and understand their experiences and their world. Ask them questions. Talk to them about what the day in the life is. And it is a humbling and I think really relevant learning experience that develops even better questions. So things like, who am I doing this for? Why would they need it? And does it add value? Is it going to help them achieve something that they're trying to achieve? And that curiosity for us at Nike, I had the pleasure of working on a project that was trying to answer this question. And it was a very relevant question because there were a lot of people that wanted to see if we could actually run a marathon in under 2 hours. Not me. I did not try to run a marathon in under 2 hours. To put that in perspective, and I know it is, for those of you that are familiar with the 400 meters in running a marathon in 2 hours requires you to run every 400 meters in about 68 seconds. So to put that in perspective, that's 105 laps at 68 seconds. It's extraordinarily fast. So we thought first, doesn't seem feasible. Well, maybe it actually might be. And we benefited from lots and lots of very talented research out in the world that gave us the confidence that there were three things that a person needed to have: a giant engine, big engine, the ability to nearly redline that engine and hold it there for a very long period of time, and it had to be extremely economical in how it was using the gas for that engine. But if you could get those three characteristics, you could have athletes that were conceivably, you could model that they could run that fast for that long. So we found those athletes. That's one of the great things about working at Nike. We embarked on a journey, which included a really fun project where one of the things we started with was, hey, the difference between the current world record and 2 hours in the marathon is about 3%. 3 minutes, about, give or take, a little bit less. So 3%, that seems like, it's a lot. But so if we could design footwear that increased the economy by 3%, one of the questions was, what would athletes do with that? You have two choices, right? You can step on the gas a little harder, right? Because you're more economical, so you can take that big engine and go a little faster, right? Or you could cruise. And athletes being athletes don't ever cruise. So we knew that we'd go faster. So we constructed some footwear which really changed the paradigm of what racing flats for marathon racing looked like. At the time, they were thin, they were light, and we knew that one of the things you needed was enough distance to store and return energy within the footwear. And you had to do that by having a foam that was extremely light, very low density, but highly resilient. So also, Nike being Nike, we went out to a vendor and had them make it. We told them what it needed, and they first, of course, said that's not possible. And then we said, yeah, we're sure it's possible. You could do that. And they did. And we sandwiched a carbon fiber plate in between that and ended those up with some footwear that not only achieved 3%, it actually achieved a 4% improvement in economy, which was super fun. And subsequently, we've doubled that since that time, which is now becoming illegal. That was fantastic. One of the best things we ever heard was when they talked about banning this shoe. That elevates you in Nike status to godlike status, because whenever you make something that's so transformative in performance, and swimming went through the same things with the different suits. There's always the conversation of whether it's fair or not. And then there was the event. There was the athletes. There was the product. And just to share a couple things, it looks relatively straightforward. You get an electric car, you drive it in front of these guys, there's a bunch of them running, and they run behind the green line, which is driving at 13.1 miles per hour, so they'll get to the end of the loop at Monza in 2 hours. But there were some things that were really, really significant challenges. One of them is drafting wasn't a thing in running. You don't see running races where people draft. We knew that was critical. So we had to put runners in wind tunnels like cyclists do on a regular basis and figure out the orientation that these athletes needed to be in to protect the lead runners going for the record. That took some work. We also had to figure out how to rotate those athletes in and out, because believe it or not, we needed about 26 runners who were capable of running a 5,000 meters in under 14:30, because that's how fast these guys were running. And there's not that many of them. And so we had to rotate them in and out, because there's no way they could run more than 5K at the speed that they were going. But the most interesting challenge was the one we didn't plan on. You know, you figure it's a Tesla. You put it on autopilot, and it goes 13.1 miles per hour. It does not. It goes 13.3, it goes 12.9, it goes 13.5, it goes back and forth. And we called Tesla and said, hey, so what's the precision of cruise control? Like, oh, it's about, 1 to 2 miles per hour. So we had to hack the Tesla cruise control to allow it to get down to hold a speed that was steady enough for the athletes. So all of that, super, super interesting project. Lots of questions that we had to answer. And we succeeded, because this, in Nike, it's one of the best branding companies in the world. That's a mistake on the board there. The real time was 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 85 seconds. So that's the way we told the story. It's the same. It's exactly the same. 1 hour, 59, 85 is 2 hours and 25 seconds. But it sounded so much better. A lot of learning in that project. Elliot, of course, has gone on to achieve running a marathon in under 2 hours in Vienna about 2 years later, which is a remarkable achievement. But it all stemmed from asking interesting questions. And I think, Alon, you touched on this, and I'm really glad that you did. The other thing I think that this program has the capability and the potential of doing is really being inclusive. And I mean that in two key ways. There are 1.5 billion people in the world that have some form of disability, and they are mostly invisible to us, and they shouldn't be. They deserve way more. The other thing is many individuals will never see our technology, and we need to remember that the translation isn't just for the translation to people that have access to the technology, but it's to the millions of people who will not have access to the technology. How can we make them better? So designing for inclusion, and most importantly, I think, is the importance of having diverse teams. That as you build this program, that it becomes a haven for diverse backgrounds, diverse gender, diverse race, ethnicity, disability, and it becomes a place where all individuals feel like they can be included in the success. And we've had firsthand experience, and I would not be able, I think, to speak to this if recently we started a company with a graduate student of mine, and I, probably one of the most talented engineers I've ever met, to try to address this challenge, which is building wearable robots that can improve mobility in children with cerebral palsy. This is a project we've been working on. Zach's been working on for about 5 years. I've been working on for 2. And we're working on technology that can both assist in daily function, but also provide gait training and then help therapists improve the mobility of individuals with impaired, not complete mobility. It works remarkably well. This is a very early Frankenstein prototype of the device and a child walking in it. And we're actually making this child who has CP, we're making it harder for them to walk. Perversely, that results in some amazing improvements. Their overground walking speed increases over time. They have better efficiency, metabolic efficiency. And this is happening about 3 to 6 times faster than conventional treatment. So we're super excited. And this video actually shows this probably in a little bit more of a clear way. This is a child who participated in 1 month, 4 weeks, 3 times a week, using this device to improve their mobility. Note that in both videos, he's not using the exoskeleton device. So super excited about what this might be able to do. And there is the possibility that, and these are all children with cerebral palsy, that we can change what it means for these individuals, both from a rehab perspective as well as in how they live their life. And that's really helped me understand the role that these individuals, the gentleman you see walking there with his mom, Jackson, was probably one of the most articulate reviewers of our technology, was unbelievably good at giving us feedback because he had spent the last 8 years of his life using assistive technology of other kinds. So, again, go big, be curious, and include all. And this is what happens when I try the things that Danny McCaskill does. That actually is him. He was trying to do a front flip on his bike, which if you've seen the video, he does actually accomplish. But it doesn't always turn out exactly like you think it's going to, but it's fun anyway. Thank you so much. Merci for being here. It's great. I love it.
Okay.